As we mentioned a moment ago, the Scott family viewed the police video of the shooting earlier this evening. Immediately after that, family lawyers issued a statement that reads in part, quote, "After watching the videos, the family again has more questions than answers. When told by police to exit his vehicle, Mr. Scott did so in a very calm, non-aggressive manner." The statement goes on to say it is impossible to discern from the videos what, if anything, Mr. Scott is holding in his hands. When he was shot and killed, Mr. Scott's hands were by his side, and he was slowly walking backwards. Joining us now, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Chief Care Putney. Chief, thanks for being with us again tonight on a busy night for you. Just want to get your reaction to that statement saying the video does show that he had his hands down at his sides and that he was walking backward when he was shot. Can you confirm that?
What I can tell you is the video is, as I said before, not the most definitive piece of evidence we would have hoped for. As I said, you can't really see what's in his hands. And as I said before, you cannot see him making a gesture like pointing the gun, which would be much more definitive. But the officer perceives, based on everything that I've said before, his failure to comply with commands, failure to drop the weapon, and then him turning to face the officers as an imminent threat, and that is what caused everything else to transpire.
I want to underscore to the viewers, since race has played a role in fact, or at least in perception in many of these cases, that the officer who shot Mr. Scott was also African American. Do you have any doubt in your mind, Chief, that this officer believed this man had a gun, and do you have any doubt that in fact Mr. Scott did have a gun on him at the time?
No. There's a lot of other evidence that I can't speak to. The State Bureau of Investigations, an independent investigative body, has taken over. I can't really speak to the investigation much further, but there's a lot of other evidence that gives us a great deal of support and comfort that the version that you heard from us before is supported by the evidence and all the statements that we were able to gather. And the totality of the circumstances lead us to believe that that version is still very much accurate. Did you,
I know you said you recovered a gun from the scene. Have you checked for fingerprints on it belonging to Mr. Scott, and do you know whether it was registered to him?
Listen, Ms. Kelly, as much as I'd love to answer that question's very relevant, but I can't really disclose that type of evidence anymore, although I'd love to, because I'm not lead on that investigation any longer.
Okay. The release of the videos, that's become controversial. You've seen them. You've shown them to the family. You say you're not going to release them despite a promise of transparency because you don't think you should display a victim's worst day for public consumption. But the family in this case, who speaks for the victim now, say they want it released. So will you reconsider?
Well, here's what I can tell you. Ultimately, that is a factor in whether or not we release. But ultimately, right now, I don't have any authority to do so. It is in the hands of the State Bureau of Investigations. They're going to do an independent investigation in there. I tell you, looking at it from all angles, I think that is probably the better option right now. And we'll see what they find based on their examinations of the facts.
Tonight, there's a greater law enforcement presence in Charlotte. We saw what were obviously riots last night. In one case, they were trying to throw a member of the press into a burning trash can. The NAACP has come out and said the National Guard presence is excessive, and it's intimidating, and it's unnecessary. Your response?
Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but in this, I think I have the expertise to consider and weigh all options and make the choices that best provide the safety of the city that we need. And that is a process, a deliberative process that I go through when I make decisions. And I came to the decision based on my best judgment, and I stand by it.
You know, the family's lawyer, Mr. Scott's family lawyer, came out and said, regardless of how this plays out at the end of the day, many feel that minorities in encounters with police are guilty until proven innocent. And so they see this as whether this officer Vincent was at fault or not, they see this as a problem that is plaguing the United States, that cops, whether they're black, whether they're white, when they see a black man, have a reaction that is racist. In your experience, sir, is there any truth to that?
I can tell you, I don't have time to really delve into it like I'd love to, but from a personal perspective, I can understand that perspective. I'm going to be quite frank with you. There were times in my past that I had a similar perspective. I was not somebody who always liked police officers. I was on the other end of the spectrum, didn't care for them very much at all. But now that I've become one, and I'm telling you, we're always looking for good people. So anybody who really wants to contribute to the solution can join us. We're always looking to diversify our ranks. But what I can tell you is my experience of taking an oath and serving something greater than myself, and making a sacrifice like our heroes out here are making tonight. It gave me a different perspective. It gave me a balanced perspective, and that's the perspective I'm using as I make decisions that I think are going to enhance the safety of our citizens and community members here in Charlotte.
Lucky to have you down there, Chief. I have to ask you one question before I let you go, which is this man who was shot in the streets last night, Justin Carr, some chanting justice for Justin tonight. Some of the protesters claim he was hit by a police officer's rubber bullet, that's how he died. You dispute that?
Yes. The evidence disputes that, and there'll be more evidence forthcoming here in the near future. Again, I go into everything with an open mind. I'm an eternal skeptic, and I think that plays well for the position I'm in. But what I can tell you, we have a lot of compelling evidence that disputes that, and I'm not going to give opinion. I'm not going to give perception. I'm going to deal with facts and truth, and the facts and truth lead me to believe that the version that we gave initially is indeed the actual truth and fact-based version, and we're getting more and more evidence to support that.
We actually have an eyewitness to the shooting coming up right here later in the show. Chief, all the best to you. Good luck tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry I couldn't finish the interview yesterday, and true to my word, I wanted to come back and do so, so thank you.
You're a gentleman for even saying that. You certainly have had your hands full, and it's good of you to give us any time at all last night or tonight. All the best to you.
Well, if you're going to pay me a compliment, I'm going to take that and leave. Thank you so much, ma'am.
All right, then. To be continued.